Hi, in this video I am going to talk about my Columnator stack. It helps you to arrange text in columns and achieve a newspaper or magazine style. Let's dive right in and see how Columnator gets placed on a page and how it can be customized. With the Columnator stack in edit mode, you can see that it tries to mimic what the text is going to look like later in preview. This, however, makes it difficult to edit the text inside it, as you can see. This is why we have a preview switch in the inspector, which turns this feature off for the sake of being able to properly edit the text. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to copy this placeholder text quite a few times now, so that we have something which can flow into columns. Okay, underneath the preview switch, we have the column slider, where you can set the number of columns. If you set it to 0, the number of columns is calculated by the browser automatically based on what is entered in column width, our next field. Let's for this now set it to 3. The column width sets the maximum width of a single column. If you set this to 0, you have it also automatically calculated by the browser based actually on the columns setting above. However, setting both to the automatic setting does not give any proper instruction to the browser, and therefore you will end up with no columns at all. What I'm doing now, 0 columns and 0 here, makes no columns. Similar to the previous field, the column height defines the height of a single column. Okay, let's set this to 400 in this case. Both of these fields can be influenced in terms of what units are used to either pixels or ems. A quick word about the possibility to set most of the parameters to an auto value. While this might be suitable for many layouts, you give away most of your options to A, use the tools further down to their best capabilities, and B, subsequently make your layout stand out from the masses. And this is most probably why you bought this thing. I encourage you to experiment with the different settings, and what looks daunting in the first place will suddenly make sense. Just don't change too many parameters at the same time. Next up is the column fill dropdown. It offers two options, auto and balance. What it does is to give the browser the instruction to either first fill up the height of a column before starting a new one, this is the auto mode, or first fill up the given number of columns, here, and then fill up the height. For this to work properly and to see a difference between these two options, you have to set column slider, this one here, to a value larger than 1, and column height to a value larger than column width. For the sake of our demo, let's set the number of columns to 2, which is already sitting here, the column width to 300, which I'm doing now, 300, and the column height to 400. We already have plenty of text for it to flow into columns, and now we are already in preview mode, and you see actually that it actually follows our principle of first filling up the first column and then flowing into the second. If I switch over to balance, both columns are filled and they both have the same height. Let's go back to auto so that you can see the difference once more. First fill up the height of a column, and now fill both columns for the sake of less height. The next settings are implemented differently in each web browser. You will have to decide to either experiment with them in order to find the best compromise, or leave these settings to their actual default. In particular, we're talking about text align, last line, and hyphens. Text align lets you choose between left, center, right, and justify. While there is nothing special about the first three, justify can lead to ugly spacing of words in a line. Something like here, for example. Some browsers deal with this better than others. This also can happen on the last line. This is why we have the last line setting here. You have the setting start, which means a line left if the text direction is left to right, and a line right if the text direction is right to left. End, just other way around. Center speaks for itself, and justify again as well. This setting is still marked as experimental, and it is interpreted differently by each web browser. The preview, what we see here in RapidWeaver, is based on Safari. Lastly, the hyphens setting influences how the browser hyphenates words. You can choose between auto, where the browser decides how to hyphenate, and the quality here depends strongly on the implementation as well as the language. Most browsers are best in English and abysmal in any other language. You can additionally help by setting hyphenation. Let's go to manual. Here the user or the author, which is you, is responsible for setting the hyphenation himself or herself by setting either hard hyphens, which is actually the hyphen sign itself, which is then always rendered, which is then can be quite ugly. Like if we put it here into computer hyphen, let's highlight this so that we find it later again. Here. Or you can also set so-called soft hyphens. That is the HTML word ampersand shy semicolon. And you see it's still italic, and here, as you see, it is being not used, and should there be a hyphenation event, it will use this as the hyphenation point. Lastly, in the hyphen settings, you also have the none setting, so it doesn't hyphenate at all. Try whatever suits your text best, and your language, of course, and try to keep it on auto as good as you can. It does quite a good job most of the times. Now over to the gap setting. Here you define the width of the gap between our columns. Using the units drop-down, you can say whether it's either in pixels or in EMs. EMs is in this case the default. The divider style lets you choose whether you want to display a divider between the columns and what type it should be. You have quite a few options, but don't go overboard here. The default is solid. You can also set it to none, and then of course there is no divider at all. Or in this case, let's just do something funny with dashed. So you see here we have a dashed line. Under divider color, you can set its color. Also, it's not advisable to do something fancy here because it will distract from the text. But nevertheless, let's put this to red. And now you can also set the divider width. Let's just increase this to, say, 50, not 500, 50. And you see that actually if the divider width is larger than the gap, it will not extend the gap. It will rather go into the text. So if you set this to the same unit size, like gap, you can be sure that it just fills the gap. Next up, we have the remove bullets from lists checkbox, which does exactly what the name says. It removes bullets from lists. The next one is quite interesting, span headlines. If we switch this on, we get H1 to H6 buttons. And this works as follows. If we have, for example, now H3 headline in our text, this will span the headline across multiple columns. Let's just do that quickly. I'll enter our text here. Mark it and set it to H3. Go over into the edit mode for this. Currently nothing is happening and I have switched on span headlines. Now I'm selecting the H3 headline and you see that it actually spans these two columns. If you go for more columns than that, like example, we have to go for balance and say 4, column width 150, we should see that it really spans multiple columns. Now, if you own our Gutenberg stack, you can use the font set and the style set drop-downs to further customize the look of your columns. If you don't own Gutenberg yet, you can use the custom CSS class entry field to do similar things. Now you know everything about Columnator, and I hope this video gave you some valuable insight how to get the most out of it. If you like Columnator, you might also be interested in my other stacks. Please follow the link below this video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.